Welcome back to the After Action Project, episode 105. Tonight we are joined by Jared Reston of Reston Training Group. Tonight's episode, just like every episode, is brought to you by Locked In Grip and the Range Buddy app. Have you ever lost that perfect grip after shooting multiple rounds, or had your sweaty grip diminish your ability to hang onto your firearms in different weather conditions? Locked In Grip is a grip enhancer that keeps your hands free of moisture to create a slip-free connection to the action of shooting your firearm. Locked In Grip Liquid Shooting Sports Chalk is made for shooters by shooters. That's by the good folks over there at the Complete Combatant. Visit lockedingrip.com. That's lockedingrip.com to purchase your liquid shooting sports chalk now. And then the Range Buddy app is a collection of over 160 handgun shooting drills sorted by their required target type, filterable by skills. They're an instructor marketplace on there for some vetted instructors beyond the NRA or USCCA basic instructor level stuff. There's going to be a virtual instructor component to that and a whole bunch of other cool things. So check out the Range Buddy app on Android or iOS. That's rangebuddy.app. It's available for Android or iOS devices. But tonight, super excited to get in here and talk with Jared about his CQB course. Jared has been a law enforcement officer with the Jacksonville Sheriff's Office since 2001 and an active member of SWAT since 2004. He's currently assigned as a detective in the Department of Homeland Security Gang Investigations Unit, where he serves as the assistant team leader as well as the lead firearms instructor for the SWAT team. Throughout his career in law enforcement, he's been involved in the successful resolution of more than 1,000 SWAT missions, including several of which were lethal force incidents. Some of our listeners and viewers might be familiar with the story of the shooting that he was involved in back in 2008 that left him shot several times, including hits to the jaw, elbow, hip, thigh, and a few rounds to the chest. For his actions during that altercation, Jared was awarded the Medal of Valor, American Police and Hall of Fame's National Police Officer of the Year, the Fraternal Order of Police's Florida Police Officer of the Year, and the State of Florida's Law Enforcement Officer of the Year. So, Jared, do us a favor, introduce yourself to our listeners, fill in any gaps that I might have missed or skipped over, and then really talk to us about what got you into the firearms training side.
All right. So, again, I'm Jared Reston. Everything you said is correct, except for I'm still not active. I retired 3 years ago. I need to update my bio, apparently. But everything else was good. I retired 3 years ago, and now still doing full-time training. I work for Safariland as a sales rep, and I'm also with Ridgeline Defense as their law enforcement sales director for the rifles that we have out now. So kind of what got me started into this. So like you were talking about the shooting that I was involved in, that shooting happened in 2008. And after it, I started kind of going to different conferences and different tactical conferences and things, and speaking on mindset and speaking about doing incident debrief. And at the time, I only had about 5 years on the department, semi-new to SWAT. I had 2 years on at that point when I got into it, and I kind of lived in my own little bubble. And it was weird because the Jacksonville Sheriff's Office, we've always had a great culture here. We have, as a department, have been involved in a lot of shootings. It's just the nature of the area we live in. Jacksonville's the murder capital of Florida. So we do a lot of work. We were a very professional SWAT team, a very trained SWAT team. And I just kind of figured everybody was like that. But then once I started touring the country speaking, I kind of realized it wasn't that, and I should take advantage of the training that I'm getting through that, because we're so well funded and that I need to put this out. It started as, me trying to put it out to police. I want to train police to be better. And then it's like, then the open enrollment side really kind of opened up, and it wasn't like a money thing. It was just like, citizens need to be trained. That there needs to be, I feel the program that I've built through the training that I've had is good for domestic law enforcement and domestic civilian use. And it's not really all about use of force stuff. It's just about the skills, to develop the skills to have it. So when you have to use that, you're really not worried about the shooting side of things. That's going to happen. You're going to use all your bandwidth of your brain thinking about just how to solve the problem. Because a lot of times it's not, just because you can shoot, should you shoot? You know what I mean? And like, those are the things that you got to figure out. So that's how Reston Group came about. It started as like just trying to build a better law enforcement culture. And then it just turned into, I just want a better shooting culture for everybody.
I love it. That makes sense. Jordan, let's do us a favor. Introduce yourself to our listeners and what got you into the firearms, your background in the firearms training community, and what brought you to Jared and his training.
So I kind of grew up competitively shooting, kind of worked in a gun shop growing up. And then towards the end of college, I started a risk management consulting company. So I got into that side of it and started getting more geared towards government side. We started taking more contract work. I had hired a retired Fed to work for me early on, and we started getting contracts to train guys. So I was leaning on the consulting side, doing threat assessments and stuff like that. He was doing training. I was just kind of hanging out, rolling through it. And then I started taking more outside classes, working more with it. And, when we started knocking down government contracts, I got really, really down the rabbit hole training because I was having to provide so much for my guys. I got no audio.
Sorry about that. That was my act like this is the first time doing a podcast. Jared, before we get into the CQB course, talk to us a little bit about that 2008 shooting incident, and maybe some of the lessons that you wish you had learned prior to being involved in that.
So I'll say this. I didn't learn a lesson in that shooting that I would change. What it did do is validate so much stuff that I learned, and I heard from people that is, out there in the training world that's putting things out that you're not, like, it's not, what you want to do or whatever, but it's things that happened and didn't happen in the shooting. So So in 2008, I was involved. I ended up chasing a shoplifter. It was a foot pursuit from a Regency Square Mall. It covered over a quarter mile in that. I attempted to tase the suspect, couldn't tase him, had to go hands-on with him, started into a physical fight with him. During seconds into that physical fight, he produced a .45 caliber Glock, which was Glock 22. I never really saw it. His first shot, it hit me dead center of my jaw here and then exited out my neck. I took 3 of them across my body armor, 1 in my left thigh above the knee. It exited out high in the thigh. 1 in my right buttock, which then struck my hip, broke my hip, and then a graze on my right elbow. And then I was able to return fire and kill him fighting from my back as we were down. So with that, like, the things that, like, you hear and you don't, like, people can fight through a lot of things. Yes, you can. I'm here to tell you right now, getting shot does not hurt. It hurts, 10 to 15 seconds later, like, that hurts, like the aftermath hurts, but like, you can fight through it very easily. The human body is super unimpressed with especially pistol rounds, you know what I mean? And then, like, you'll hear, like, oh, when bullets hit your body armor, like, it feels like it hit with a sledgehammer. I couldn't tell you when those rounds ever hit my body armor. Like, I can tell you I can only tell you the first round that hit me was this one through my jaw because it was my first. So it's kind of like if you've ever been in, like, force on force training, like, where you get kind of lit up a little bit and you're like, oh man, I took one in my arm, but then you're showering later and you're like, shit, I got bruises all over my legs and like, your body is going to protect you. Like, and so it's I guess that would be what I learned through it and actually like validated. It was like, that's going to happen. And like, you're going to resort back to your training. You're going to do whatever what you've trained to do, you're going to do when that reptile brain takes over and starts working under stress. So if you ever think you're going to rise to that occasion, you're not. Like, it has to start happening.
Yeah, I always tell everybody in class that everybody wants to be John Wick, but before you can be John Wick, you got to do some training. And Jared, I first of all, I think anybody that's watching, they need to go back and watch your show, watch your seminars, and from start to finish. I watched recently. You showed pictures and locations and all that. That's one of the most informative podcasts that I've really grabbed onto, I guess. And oftentimes we talk about mindset, and one thing for me, I always say is, mindset's great, but you got to have the training behind the mindset. Otherwise it's useless. So I would just want your opinion on, during that was going on, if you can remember, was there any thought process of mindset of like, hey, I'm going home at the end of the day, I'm going to fight through this? Or was it pretty much survival mode until everything was done?
That's what mindset thinks it's going to be. Like, all I want to do is win. My mindset was a winning mindset. It wasn't about going home. It wasn't about killing. It wasn't about survive. It was, we're in a gunfight. I'm going to win this gunfight. And the outcome will be me going home, right? Like, mindset comes from what you prepared to do for this, right? Like Bear Bryant said it best. Like, I mean, when I end my speeches, I leave it with this. It's not the will to win that matters. It's the will to prepare to win that makes the difference, right? Like, you can't, if you don't have the skills, I'll also say, so I was super lucky. You can call it divine intervention or luck or whatever you want. Like, I had several rounds miss major arteries by centimeters, and mindset helps you take advantage of the luck that you're given, but your skills carry you through the day to win. Like, if I was just shooting back at him, there's no win there. You know what I mean? It was me actually getting hits while shooting back. Like, that's what people need to understand. You have to also have the skill set to do what you say you're going to do, or whatever. Like, like, you're not going to pick the Volkswagen off your baby because you're a super weak lady. That's a freaking fairy tale. It's not going to happen. Like, you are going back to your training.
Man, you're a pretty good looking dude for being shot in the face with a 45. I thought that was the Lord's caliber, right? The man stopper.
That's what they say.
That's what everybody says. Right?
That's the word on the streets.
Yeah. Before we dive into the CQB class, there's one other thing that I kind of want to touch on, and it's something that gets, when folks are talking about performance shooting and, quarter second splits, half second splits, what have you, you're one of the experts that's kind of gets cited about outshooting headlights. And I think that it's one of the things that's kind of misconstrued and misunderstood. So with regard, when we're looking at, a lethal force encounter, right? The moment when your life is on the line and it's your performance that matters. Can you dig into that a little bit more for us and just kind of talk about that reaction speed and outshooting your headlights?
So where it comes from for me is, so I was involved in a shooting, not that I was, my last shooting I was involved in on duty. And I was shooting that day like 0.1618 splits right before I got into the shooting. And people are like, well, how do you know that? Because I literally was leaving the range to go to lunch. And I got into a shooting on the way to the burrito store. And That's what we were doing that day, was a burn it down day on the range. Like, target transitions, everything. And I'm running the gun as fast as we can run them. And I got into a shooting, And again, it was, 4 yards apart of a guy who was trying to murder his wife in front of us. I went to his body, went to his head. So I was like fired 4 to his body, 3 to his head. But when he fell, but he was in a car still. So all my chest hits hit. When I went to his head, my first rifle round hit to his head. He was gone, and there was 2 holes through the windshield. Very close together, probably well within an inch. So I had good trigger presses and I had good recoil management. And when I remember back on the shooting, I don't ever remember my dot not being on his head. So I was training myself to see it that fast, and I could see the dot and I could see this. But when that round hit him, he dropped. And I sent 2 rounds before I could say, all right, he's done, or he's not there, or whatever it is, right? And was it a big deal in that shooting? Not at all. But if that would have been a different situation and that guy was in my hard corner, let's say in a house, and I would have went to the body, went to the head, I would have sent 2 rounds through the drywall at head height, and maybe my teammates are on the other side of that wall. You know what I mean? And it wasn't a missed shot. It was I didn't turn it off in time. So what I say is, for training and everything, I try to stay as close to 0.25 second splits now, because science says, not Jared Reston, science says that a athlete, it takes him a quarter second to see something, observe, and act on it. Right? So if I'm shooting faster than that 0.25, I'm setting up myself for failure almost, or a possible failure. So I try to purposely take it off of splits to be right there at that 0.25, right? And if I'm shooting faster or slower, and then so people get kind of butthurt about it. Well, you can go faster. And I'm like, 100% you can go faster. But also, I'm not training to shoot paper, and I'm not training to shoot that. I'm training to shoot meat. I do shoot competitions. I do shoot things, but that's not my goal in this. My goal is to be a great professional at my job, which is shooting meat if I have to shoot it. So I constantly train to shoot movers, if that makes sense. So with that, it's easy to kind of shoot 0.6 splits on a bill drill. That's an easy day. But I want you to be able to do a bill drill on 5 targets or 6 targets spread across, and I still want it to sound like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 with quarter second splits. So what cadence kind of in keeping up with those splits does, it speeds you up when you need to be sped up and slows you down, and control the cougar that's on you under stress to maybe slow you down a little bit when you need to be slowed down to get your hit. Because if you're not hitting, you're just making noise. And your opponent has auditory exclusion too, so no one hears your noise. It's not that scary. It's the fastest way to end fights is to putting them out and get done, and only hits count. I've seen people get shot in the calf or whatever, and they drop like a fly. But I've also seen people eat a lot of rounds. So I'm never going to leave that up to the perk, you know what I mean, or the suspect. I'm going to put them out, and the quickest way I know to do that is to kill them.
No, that makes sense, man. I like it. I like the explanation. One of the things I talk about with our folks is, when we're talking about submitting and giving up, or just kind of complying, right? That victim compliance. I'm like, you understand you're betting your life on the mercy of a violent criminal actor, as Dr. William April would say, right? Like
Yes.
that's what you're doing. You're betting your life on the mercy of somebody who's willing to stick a gun in your face or a knife in your rib cage. And that guy gets the largest say in that outcome. If you're taking yourself out of the situation by just saying, hey, do whatever you want to me. That's cool. So I appreciate the clarification on that. I want to flip it to the CQB course. Jordan, talk to us a little bit about the course requirements and the gear that you brought with you to that class.
I don't even really remember the course requirements off the top of my head. A UTM rifle. I know Jared he actually loaned me a bolt. So you roll in with that. There's a live fire portion first thing in the morning, pistol rifle, basically small pieces of Jared's mod 2 gunfire mod 2, just to make sure everybody's on paper. Everybody's guns are zeroed. Basically removing any excuses, letting Jared make sure that everybody, when we go in the house, is tuned up, right? If he sees, any character flaws or capability flaws, he can sit there and tune it up and fix that. We go in the house, we ran slick for most of the time, and then slowly started adding gears. We added steps into it, ballistic helmet, body armor, gun belt kit. I'm trying to remember what else is on the packing list for that one. But I did it in Tuscaloosa, so that meant 3 shirts a day for me because it's during the summer. It was supposed to be in the spring, but we got locked out. And he calls me. He's like, hey, man, we're going to do it in Tuscaloosa. It's going to be the last weekend in July, first weekend in August. I'm like, I'm going to drown just trying to breathe the air. Yeah, all the South Florida dudes rolling by. And I was just like, this is horrible, but great facility. You just kind of walk in with your normal kit you'd go to the shoot house with. Carrier, body armor, helmet, glasses, rifle, the sling, aim point optic, and go get it on.
Hey, Jared, do you do that? Is that private sector also, or is that just law enforcement?
So for like law enforcement, like the course that George talked about is our high risk warrants, and so like that's going to be more of a team aspect. But I also do CQB for civilians or whatever, just room clearing, like just the understanding, like you're not going to be working in a big team. Like I'll put you in pairs just so you get more reps. But I mean, understanding that you're probably going to be doing this solo, but just understanding the rules of CQB, how to collapse a room, what you're looking for, your priorities of work, that all gets put out. So you can work CQB in a team one with 2 people or single people, if you just know how it is and work the angles and how to set up on doors and things like that. So yes, we do offer it for civilians also. It's actually a great course that dudes eat up because it's the next level. Like for me, shooting, my favorite thing is CQB. Like I mean, to me, that's the game.
It's the show.
Shooting well just gets you a ticket to the show. Like because there's so many great shooters, you put them in a CQB scenario and they are just soup sandwiches. You know what I mean? But they can shoot real well, but they can't really think and they can't work as a teammate, or they're, that's one big thing is everybody thinks they're the only killer in the room when you have a room full of killers. You know what I mean? Like, so you don't have to go outside of what you're supposed to do. You do your job, they'll do your job, and the team wins.
Gotcha. So in comparison to the kit and gear that Jordan mentioned, if I was to join that as a civilian, what kind of gear would I run? Just the basic gear, gun, magazines? What would that look like?
So like if with that course, I normally will supply UTM bolts, and the UTM ammo is in the cost of the course. So really all you have to show up with an AR-15 style rifle. I'll give you a bolt and ammo and a magazine, and you're slick, most of it. Because again, it's not a dress-up show. It's how I do this, what I do here, and then you can do what you're doing, and you can add whatever kit you have to it. But I mean, a lot of it's not kit-based, it's tactics-based. So like once you're learning tactics, it's why make it hard to learn? You know what I mean? Add complexity later.
I like the simplicity of that, of just bringing an AR with a strap and you bring the rest. So to be able to bring the realism into it for a civilian. So thanks for that.
Yeah. I mean, but it's not really the realism. That's how everybody should learn. You shouldn't, like, crawl, walk, run. You don't have to be in kit and be uncomfortable and be, to learn. You're actually slowing down the learning process. Dude should just be, as easy as it is. And then once you learn how to go fast a little bit, adding stuff makes you the same speed. Like, you're always going to be faster, like slick or whatever, but you just add a little bit and you can still maintain that speed, rather than having an excuse of, well, I'm in all this kit, or I'm in this and I'm on that. Like, that's not the excuse. Fix your stuff.
Scale it once you got it figured out.
Yeah.
So for this course, I'm assuming that it's more geared towards like SWAT, like team folks, and not necessarily the average law enforcement patrol officer or am I wrong in that assumption? I guess, what's the makeup of your student body in this class?
So with that class, it gets kind of 50-50. Like, it might not be a SWAT team, but maybe a task force guy who they do serve warrants. But it also can just go down to working with your patrol partner on the street, clearing you have a burglar alarm with an open door kicked in. Do we know that someone's in there? No, but we still we suspect, you know what I mean? So we're looking for a guy, but we can't, you're not going to call on a SWAT team to clear that. So people have to clear these things. It's just understanding CQB. And so with high risk warrants, it's kind of just scaling your CQB approach to how you're pretty much your actions at a threshold. So like for me, there's dynamic, which is like hostage rescue, which you're going to lay it out a little bit. Or then you go with like a high risk warrants, where you're going to slow it down a little bit. Your actions outside the threshold is, we're going to like almost more of a combat clear if like you're a military guy or something. So we're going to pie doors off. We're going to work together as a team. As soon as we get it pied, then we're going to go in that room. So we kind of slow it down but once it's pied and it's good to go and we're released to go in the room, we move at the same speed as we still would as a hostage rescue. It's just literally just taking it, and CQB is dangerous. Like that's what it is. And you'll never make it safe. We just try to mitigate a little bit of danger.
That makes sense. Jordan, what was your biggest obstacle or the biggest challenge for you in this course?
That class in a short time period is it's a lot to unpack. And I'm really lucky that Jared's one of my my main mentors and a good buddy of mine. I think I was shooting him text messages like 2 or 3 weeks later, like, hey, on this, my notes say A, B, and C, but what are the key points to A, B, and C? That's a whole lot of, in any CQB like 3-day class, it's a whole lot of information to unpack in that amount of time. And Jared does a really great job of scaling it, where it's just a 2-man entry, getting to your point where we're walking through it, scaling the threshold clears. Okay, we'll add a third man into the stack, scaling a threshold clear into threshold scan into making entry to the room. It's just the amount of information that you take in a class like that. You're not going to walk home the next day and be like, got it, right? You're going to be sitting there 2 weeks later going, oh crap, man, I don't really remember this note, and why did I take this picture? And for me, I was calling Jared and shooting text messages 2 weeks later, like, hey, I've got this in my phone. Go over it one more time real quick. That way I understand it at a granular level. I think I've done CQ with multiple people. Every one of those classes, you walk out the door and you're like, I know there's something important about this fact, but I just can't remember it because of the volume of information you get. The shooting's not hard. if you've ever done shooting on the move with Jared, man, the pace is the pace. You get it figured out pretty quick. Even if you're 5 inches shorter than Jared, you got to run next to him, right? He just tells me move my feet faster. Okay, man, like it is what it is. The shooting's easy. Like the movement's not hard. It's just the volume of information you have to take in a class like that. He talks about, CQB is a show, right? Like you got to progress through that. Nobody gets called up out of high school and goes, all right, man, you played really good for your 3A state championship team. We're going to pop you into center field for the Yankees. You're hitting 3-hole. It doesn't happen. You're going to have to, earn that time and spend time there. And the way that class is structured, you walk out pretty salty. You have a really good depth of knowledge on that process. But yeah, the hard part about that class is waking up the next day being like, man, I don't feel like I remembered as much as I should have, even though I took copious notes. Well, let me text Jared and say, hey, when we did 3-man and we did this, why did we do this thing?
Jared, do you find one of the things that we hear when we're talking to some law enforcement instructors is the level of motivation that the students have, and that there's a pretty noticeable disparity between the folks that are told to go to this class and the folks that show up on their own dime. If we're talking about the makeup of this course specifically, and I'd imagine that the folks are probably somewhat self-motivated and maybe took a little bit of initiative to enroll in this class, or is it something where departments are kind of sending folks for a mandatory training?
I think it can go both ways, but that's with all training. But it's my job to get them motivated and to get them dialed in and get them it's my job to buy them in, you know what I mean? And by the time they leave, they're ready to go. You've had several people start salty, you know what I mean? And just, it's just going to be this. And then, it's my job as the instructor, as a coach, not to just give them information, but to get them to buy in on it. You know what I mean? And to see why they want to be here, see why they want to do it. And every class is like that. Why am I doing this? Because this is why. You know what I mean? And I'm not a big guy on, in any class I teach, this is the way we do it because this is the way we do it. I started out in 2003 on the SWAT team, We used to do a lot of crazy tactics, a lot of different stuff, and we evolved until I retired in 2020. So over those 18 years, I can see what people are like, well, we do this and we do that. Cool. I used to do that too, but this is why I don't do that anymore. I like to talk about these things and we'll talk it through, not just you'll do it because I say you're going to do it or it's the way. It's, all these things are a way, and I'll talk about why I don't do that and why I do that, or vice versa, whatever, and then I might learn something from a student and be like, I like that. Where'd you learn that? You know what I mean? Because I still train. I still like to go to make sure that I'm putting out, is what I believe the most up-to-date and viable information that we can for students, and put out a great product and get buy-in. Because if you don't get buy-in, it's just, you're just sitting there spinning your wheels.
Yeah, I wanted to step back at what Jordan said about taking a lot of notes. I'm a big note taker when I take courses too. And then the next day you wake up and it's like, man, I have all these notes, and it just seems like I don't remember half of what I just learned, because when it's a really good class, you get as much information you have. So I'm going to just ask you a question in the student perspective, Jared. It sounds to me like this class potentially is kind of like Disneyland. You can go more than once and see a bunch of different things each time you go. With Jordan being somebody that you mentor, if I was just a standard student, walk in, took your class, are you available for follow-up questions via email and all that stuff after your courses?
Oh, 150%. That's my closing argument. Hey, this isn't a one-night stand or a 2-night stand or whatever it is. I'm available because I understand that's what people get. I took this note. I don't if you send me an email hey, what was the POI for the course? I'll be like, yeah, no. But you show I took it this is my note. This is what it said. I remember doing this, but I don't remember what our goals or what we were trying to reach. like I love those conversations. Like to me, like shooting and CQB is my job and stuff, but it's also like my hobby and I love it. So I like talking about it. Like I mean, I can talk, like this is fun to me right here on this podcast, like just talking about different stuff and getting it going and talking about, like, because I'm passionate about it. So like, yeah, 100% anybody who's ever taken a class can email me, hit me on social media, whatever it is. And it's like, I mean, I'll send that back.
Cool.
But like what you're saying is, do I want you to come back to me? 100% I want you to come back to me. But I also want, if you go to another CQB class, I never want someone to be like, where the hell did you learn that shit from? You know what I mean? Because like we've all like I love like when students are like, oh, I'm taking this guy and that guy and this guy. I'm like, all right, like cool. But I don't want my students to ever like, I want them to represent me to the fullest and be like, this is so when they go to a CQB class, they're like, all right, cool. I know what you're talking about because of this. Like, we're going to talk about different CQB, processes or whatever they want to do. And like, some people teach this. I don't teach this because of this. And like this, and I'll go so that you can talk with a little bit of education on it, not just, well, that's just what he said. Like, I hate that shit.
Yeah, the best thing to do is to be able to come out of a class, not only learn what you're doing, but to explain and understand why you did it,
Right.
in order to continue your your continuum of core training, and to be able to do some of that practicing at home. You got to understand why and what you're doing. I wanted to step back and just ask the question, as far as like a course like this, do you do this only locally or do you travel? And if you do, what does it take to, I mean, you got to have some form of a shoot house, right?
Well, so it's all I need is a sim house, because it's going to be all like, it's all going to be like, simunition type, force on force rounds, but on paper. So like for civilian side, all I need is a corner fed room, a center fed room, and hopefully those two tie together. So I can do like, off of each other, so I can have a follow on room. But I mean, it's very, very small. Like, I'm in Washington later this year, and literally they have two rooms. They have a center fed and a corner fed that tie off each other, and it's just a plywood, like squared rooms. You know what I mean? And with the limited amount of what I just talked about, I will have your mind like you're going to be like, what the hell was I just doing? And with just that little, because that's all it is. It's corner fed, center fed. What I'm doing, reacting off of partner, building on the next room, collapsing this room, fixing problems here, and then going on. So, I mean, you can do a lot with very little. You don't need like shoot houses and all those things. It's, dudes can do it hanging sheets or whatever. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that makes sense.
But so like, I really don't do a lot of them. Like most of them are on the road. Like, so I have 2 civilian room clearing classes. I have one in California and one in Washington coming up this year. And like, even at Shooter Symposium, we did it with like we had a single room with 2 different doors. We had a corner fed and a center fed door, and just did it off one room. Like, you know what I mean? So.
Yeah, it makes sense. So I'm going to play a little bit of devil's advocate. As a shooter and taking a lot of classes and all that stuff, if you needed to, but you don't, I want to be clear on that. I mean, sell me on this class. Why would I need, as a civilian, to learn how to clear a room? Like, sell me on that. Why would I do that?
Well, I mean, we all live in houses. Things happen inside your house. So being able to move through your house without walking through the center and understanding angles and where things happen from, and to do it is paramount. Or even in a mall working, it's too many people take it like into a thing. It's just CQB. Like, it's just moving through a structure, covering as many angles as you can, understanding where you're exposed from and how vulnerable you are, not just, it's not always a robbery at the ATM. It's not always, you might have to move to something, and just understanding how to move and do things is pretty, to me, it's the next level. It's a thinking man's game. It might not make you even clear anything, but understanding, like working around a vehicle, it's CQB. Like, you're working angles, you're doing some stuff, and it's freeing up bandwidth that you don't have to, you're not nervous about. Like, if you're worried about, oh my God, now I got to move through this house, well, you're not going to make the right decision if it comes out. You know what I mean? So it's just building that next layer into your professionalism, or your
capability.
It's your job, but like just being harder to kill. Like, whatever that scenario is, you're prepared for it, and it's just flat out fun. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I like CQB because it's not just banging on a range. All right, bud. Okay. But like, it's thinking, it's doing things, and it's working with a teammate, or like, you know what I mean? Like, sometimes it's just, we always think we're going to be alone, but I'm sure, if Andy and Jeremy are walking through a building somewhere and something happens, they're not going to be like, well, you take this one, buddy. You know what I mean? You're going to start working as a pair and as a team, and having that just kind of like, it doesn't need to be you're required to work to each other. But if I hang out with these people, like maybe having a little bit of a CQB based knowledge with the people I hang out with, and understand what they're supposed to do. And because that's the best thing in CQB, is being predictable. If I know what this guy's supposed to do, because we have the same SOPs, I can kind of push and I do things, rather than I'm like, well, what's that? Like, instead of looking at what's he doing, now I'm worried about what he's doing, not what I'm doing and what the threat is. So, I mean, that's to me what it is. And
I think the civilian side, when you talk to people that aren't just actively in training, the CQB, oh, that's scary. That's what the SWAT guys do. That's what soft units do. I'm never going to do CQB because I sell insurance. Okay, man, you got kids in your house. The door gets kicked in the middle of the night. You got to go get your kids. Guess what? You're now doing CQB, and that's just how it is, right? Don't let the acronym or the term be the scary part. And what he's talking about, now you understand the angles, and now you walk to your house and you start seeing, oh, kids' room's a corner fed room. Oh, this is how I'm going to take this hallway. If I go bump in the night, got to go run across the house with a Glock 19, a flashlight, and underwear, I know exactly how to do that. And now I can rep it beforehand. Now I have the confidence in my capability because I have had that training. I have had those mental dry reps, and I have a plan. Doesn't even have to be, me and Jared could be eating lunch, and like, okay, cool. Now I got Jared Reston. Like, I'm gonna let him go first, right? Because he's a superstar and he's a lot bigger than I am. But that might not be my gunfight. That might not be the one I end up in. It might be somebody kicks in my front door in the middle of the night, and now I'm not sending my wife out there. I'm not hoping the 9-year-old runs to the safe and grabs a rifle and goes to work. I've got to go deal with that. But now I have an SOP. It's not going to be the first time I've done it. I'm not sitting there terrified. Now I have home field advantage and an experience and capability overmatch against somebody.
Yeah, I think in the civilian world, there's a lot of there's good information at like hey, I'm a brand new firearms, like I'm teaching the brand new firearms instructor, but I think a bit of the bad information that gets kind of well-intentioned, but it's bad information, is that barricade in your house, right? Like, if you hear a bump in the night, barricade in your house. And that's something that I, would advocate. I'm like, no, if somebody kicks in your front door, you barricade in the house. I'm like, that's a great plan. But what if your alarm goes off for a glass break sensor on the other side of your house? Barricade in the house, but it's nothing, right? It's a dog that knocks something over. At some point, you might have to determine whether or not this is a home invasion or it's a false alarm. And it wasn't until, that kind of scenario happened with me, right? Before my wife, when we were dating, she had gotten back to her house and the front door was open. So she called the police, right? And the police were like, well, do you want us to come out? She was like, yeah, I want the police to come out. And then she called me and I said, don't go in the house, right? If we look at when burglaries go from a nonviolent property crime to a violent felony, that's when the homeowner interrupts the burglary.
Yeah.
And that's a situation, if we're looking at Albuquerque, that's a situation where it's like, well, if you have to get in your house, the police might not come, for hey, my front door is open and my alarm is going off. So there are situations where the civilian might have to do the room clearing thing. And it's not like a tactical hostage rescue thing, but it's one of those things where I have to get in here and make sure that my house is okay for my family to go into, because we can't wait the 2 or 3 hours for this low priority call to be responded to. I've had an incident where my burglar alarm was going off in the middle of the night. And it's one of those things where it's like, all right, it's a glass break sensor. I don't see anything on the cameras moving around, but I'm not going to call the police out for this necessarily, because I don't think it's a burglary, right? I think it is a false alarm. I'm pretty confident in that. But there's a greater than 0% chance that it might be. So having that knowledge and that skill set and that ability, I think, is critically important. And I think it is something that kind of gets, that, hey, just barricade in your master bedroom closet with everybody. And at Jordan's point, well, you might have to go get your kids to get them in there.
100%.
So all of that.
My kids don't sleep in my bed, so my wife will go to the closet, but my job is to go now set up in between any other thing and where my kids' room is. Like, I'm going to be the stronghold there. You know what I mean? So you got to have that, but I'm not going to ever tell someone to barricade and do your house is your castle. If your TV is worth going to search for, then your TV is I'm not going to ever tell you it's not worth it, because, you worked your ass off for that, or you worked your ass off for something priceless in your house, then protect it. It's your house. They shouldn't be in your fucking house. You know what I mean? So now just have the training and the wherewithal to get there and how to do it smoothly and to beat the person who's in your house, the untrained. You know what I mean? Because, clearing a house by yourself, super dangerous. You know what I mean? But sitting there waiting for someone to come, that gunfight's inevitably happening. So maybe you can have it away from your family and on your terms a little bit, rather than, him kicking in a door on you. And now you and him you're in a closet shooting it out. I can create a little bit of distance. I can be on the move. I can be, working different angles on them, and using, if it's at night, using white light as my, as a little bit of concealment and things like that, using tactics. This is where you learn these stuff. It just it's not going to come to you when you're walking around. It's the next levels, right? Like, you should get firearms training. Then you should get medical training. Then you just work to some CQ. You know what I mean? You're just becoming a better gun owner and a better professional. And if you think you're never going to use it, well, then why carry a gun? You know what I mean? Then you're probably not going to use that either if you really want to think about it. But it is important for civilians to learn CQB, or at least have a base knowledge of some tactics and what you're doing to clear it. Are you going to, just because you take 2 days, are you going to be able to frickin', take down the Bin Laden compound? No, but you can see some shit in some movies and be like, oh, that's stupid, or oh, that's real shit. You know what I mean?
Yeah. No, that makes sense. And it sounds like the tactics and the principles apply whether it's, your house at 2:00 in the morning or it's the Walmart right at 2:00 in the afternoon.
Right.
I kind of want to get you guys I kind of want to put you both back into the student seat and and how often do you guys see, and this might be a completely irrelevant question, but do you see the principles and the tactics behind CQB being overcomplicated, or is it, are there instructors out there making it more difficult than it needs to be, and I guess how complicated is it actually?
150% people make it way more complicated because they start. Good idea fairies come up all the time. And I do this better with this? And I can send 4 here and do this and do that and 2 take this, and 100% you can. But if you have an SOP, do it the same way every single time. I go in a room and out of a room the exact same time. So I don't have time to waste. And some people are like, well, they just do weird stuff because it sounds good, but they've never probably trained enough people to see it not work. And so especially with CQB, you really got to look to see what they did. Did they train CQB? Were they just part of CQB team, or what they did? Because a lot of keep it simple, stupid. I get what you're saying. Yes, you can do it that way, but doing it like this, the same way every single time, fucking 80% of the time it'll work 100% of the time. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
A little bit of Sex Panther up in there, but you just keep, doing the same thing, and then it'll work. The only time you have to think about things is that only 15%, because it's all written out for you. It's all there. Let's get it done. And normally it's just fixed with a couple calls. Too many people like to talk during CQB. I don't like talk. I like to make calls. With a call, it's just if I wanted to say I'm coming off, moving, I'll wait for someone to give me move. And if he says moving, I know what he's doing because that's our call, and I'll let him move. You know what I mean? That means he's coming off the wall or something like that. And just understanding the terminology and stuff, it will open up your shooting mindset to me immensely, just because now it's just not sitting on a flat range drawing and shooting or with a rifle with a low ready. It's now you're adding a lot of thinking to it, and you have a lot of accountability for your rounds. In CQB, if I stood there and we sat on the 5-yard line with a rifle and did a bunch of up drills, everybody's A zone all day long. You start adding some CQB shit in there, and it's C and D hits a lot, and they're not on the move. They're not anything crazy. It's just that stress will add a little bit of funk, and the trying to go as fast as they can and do things. It's a real humbling and great part, and it's the next level that you need to do.
Yeah,
go ahead, Jordan.
Two things about this class. One's a funny story, but when Jared said the drop-down menu thing, that when I saw that laid out the first time, I was like, oh, this just made everything super efficient. There weren't, a half a dozen decisions to be made. No, there's get to your point, collapse your primary and your secondary. Now make 1 of 2 decisions, 1 of 3 decisions. Oh, you see this weird thing. Okay, it's a 1-2-piece decision. And that drop-down list that gets laid out during the class really cleans up a lot of the weird problems you can create in the house. The other thing is he talks about the marksmanship going sideways. I use a Jared Reston target for CQB. That's what I paper up, and it's one when he doesn't have the beard, so he's still got the scar. And I'll be checking the house afterwards when I'm teaching, and dudes be like, put one right here, and they're like, got him. I'm like, actually, no, you didn't. And they're like, what do you mean? I'm like, you see that scar on his chin, the one that goes out right here? They're like, yeah. I'm like, that's a 45 ACP point blank, dude. That ain't gonna work. And that's one of the reasons I pull that paper target out all the time. It's because guys will come in with this shot right here, and they're like, got it done. I'm like, no, that guy's won that fight already once. He stuffed that dude in a drainage ditch. That's how it ended. So that the drop down list that he talks about, I think that made my brain it opened up the processor speed and made things more efficient for me making decisions.
I like it. Even just the simplicity of communication. Humble brag. About 10 years ago, I got to go to Clint Smith's Thunder Ranch. Shout out to Tim K. He got me on a little group with those guys, and we went into the shoot house, and Clint walked us through it and gave us like a really, really kind of like I wouldn't even call it scratch the surface on clearing the house, right? And I got a good basic learning, and then learning how to communicate with moving, all that. I've even brought that in with my wife, even while we're driving. Like, I'll say clear left or clear right, move, and she works with me now. It's just like I'll say, clear right, she'll say clear. I'll say moving, she'll say move, and it's just like in traffic, and now sometimes she doesn't want to play, but just taking back in the story, early in my career, Jeremy and I talked about this, and this was one of those Dunning-Kruger things for me, and I was like, dude, I'd never clear a house. Like, that's ridiculous. And unfortunately, my daughter's biological father passed away here not too long ago, and we had to clear out his house. And I was at work. My wife calls me, and she said, somebody's in the house, and called the police, and of course, they're not coming. And I said, I'll be right there. And so I was like, okay, we're outside. And I'm like, should I do this? Should I go in? Because this is dangerous. And I know it's dangerous. At the same time, what do we do? Just stand out here all day? Do we wait? Do I knock on the door? And I said, well, I'm just going to use the skills that I know, right? Went in, cleared the house the best I knew how, and got to the back bedroom. And for some weird reason, must have been a ghost, who knows? The radio was on. It's never been on for the whole week I was there. But just having a little bit of tiny skill gave me the benefit and the ability to like at least kind of know what I'm doing. So that's kind of why I gave that devil's advocate question earlier, because I think you guys all rounded out really well. You never know until the opportunity or the requirement presents itself to where you have to do something like that. Looking back at it now, I don't know if I would have done it, but I just. There's something that
do you want to be like, if you're carrying a gun, you don't want to be the person to wait for the police to do that job. If that job needed to be done, let's just say right then your wife did go in because you told her not to, but wives are going to do what wives are going to do. And like you were outside or something and you hear her screaming. You know what I mean? Are you going to call the police and be like, now my wife's in there screaming, please hurry? Like, that's not how that's going to go. So it's better to have and not need than need it and not have it. You know what I mean? Like, to me, I'm never going to wait for any, like, and I'm not talking about just police stuff. I'm just talking about,
life.
Dealing with my family or life, or my neighbor runs over and beats on a door and someone's in her house murdering. Like, roger that. Like, you just gave me a lottery ticket. Now I'm going to go through there and handle business. But like these are the things that you have to, if you're like, well, shit, like clearing this is dangerous. If that's in your mindset before you go in, that's all you're worried about. You know what I mean? Rather than like, all right, let's just go dominate this house or whatever it is and handle the job that's in front of you right now.
With training folks from different law enforcement agencies and departments, do you find yourself running up against any like institutionalized training that is outdated that your students don't want to let go of, and kind of how do you balance that? Hey, I have 2 days with this guy. He's going to go back to his department. I'm going
to make him better at the tactic that he's doing. So like, there's a few, like upon making entry, the main things are strong wall or points of domination, right? So I'll ask you which one you do, and I'm going to make you better at either one of those because I did points of domination and I've done strong wall. So I know where they're coming from and what needs to happen. So I'm going to, and I'm not going to fight you on that. Like on a 5-day, if an agency brings me in on a 5-day, then I will enforce my will on you. You know what I mean? And make you do what I think is right. But if it's 2 days, I'm going to make you better at what you're doing. And I try to like team guys up. Like, you know, I did the same. It was a 1-day high risk warrant class, kind of an entry class at Texas Tactical this year. And I just tried to put different teams, did different like POD or strong wall. Well, I put all the strong wall guys together because I don't want them working with POD guys because that's just going to add another layer of confusion that they don't need. You know what I mean? So just stick those guys together and I'm going to make you better at that.
You know, along that same question, Jared. So with firearms, right, we see this, you know, Tom Gibbons talks about the repetition or the resurgence of things about every 12 years, kind of things get recycled. So I guess along the same lines with that, does CQB, does it evolve? Or is it, you know, if you have some guy, so let me give you an example, I guess. There was a guy on one of the Facebook pages, you know, they were bragging that they have a shoot house. He's a 25-year military veteran clearing. And man, some of the stuff that we saw in the video was just like, man, I don't know about some of this stuff, right? So does it evolve? Like, does it get better? Does it change? What's your thought on that?
Yes and no, but it's not evolving. It's like, let's just consider CQB like the draw. When you first get it, you're snatching at your gun. You can't break retention. You can't do stuff. All I'm trying to do is the same thing over faster. That's where you get better at CQB. It's not moving your feet faster. It's not doing anything. It's as I'm coming in, I'm collapsing my sector fast. I'm engaging people who need to be engaged, not engaging people who don't need to be engaged, and then seeing the next problem and then making a decision and moving on that problem sooner. You know what I mean? Because like being fast at CQB is not running through the house. It's literally like if I can shave 2 seconds on a room and I'm clearing 5 rooms, now I got, 10 seconds faster. Like it's just nitpicking these little things. And that's where you get, when you see crazy shit in CQB, that's because that dude made that shit up kind of based on his stuff. Like he has a very minimal knowledge. I did it for 25 years in the military. Cool. What unit? What did you do? Were you an instructor at their schoolhouse? What did you do? And if the answer is none of that, then you made your shit up and stop because that's dangerous. You're really hurting people's lives at this point. Like, I'm pretty open about like shooting stuff because shooting, if you're getting fast and shooting, you can get pretty well. But when it comes to tactics, you're actually endangering people. And like, especially like if you're doing team stuff in a house and you're setting it up where it's really dangerous for the other person with you, like that is unsat. Like it is a very structured, the course has to be very structured. It's not as willy-nilly as a firearms course. Like you're going to be there and you're going to be close and to what I'm telling you to do. And that's what the firearms portion of the course is. I'm going to show you some things that I expect you to do, but really I'm just checking to see if you break shots, are you safe to be in here? Because I'm going to ask you to shoot close to your buddy. Not super close, within a meter, right out between a meter and outside of that. I'm going to ask you to shoot it. And I need you to be confident to making that shot, but I also need your partner confident in you that you're going to make that shot because he can't do his job if he's like, oh shit, here we go. Like, you know what I mean? Like it's that's what CQB is about. It's a team sport.
Kind of in that same vein, I want to talk about, as an instructor, how do you ensure the safety of your students going through that? I'm sure you're familiar with the the incidents that have occurred within CQB training with probably instructors that aren't qualified to be doing it. And, a well-known national level instructor had and I believe it was an instructor shot in a shoot house deal several years ago.
He shot his own AI.
It was okay. I thought it was worse than what I was
That's
saying.
very
but
Russian of him, isn't it?
Yes. Yeah. So
got to check the plates.
Yeah.
Aside from making sure there's nobody in the shoot house that doesn't need to be shot, right? What are some other things that you're doing to ensure the safety of your students? And is there a minimum skill set that students need to have to take this class?
Strip searches.
I mean, so knock on wood, I've never had an incident in one of my trainings because I am very stringent on if you walk away, like I'm checking you, I'm patting you down, I'm checking for your magazines, your simunition, it's all going to be sims. You're going to have to try to get something in on me. And if you shoot somebody like you wanted to, you know what I mean? Because I'm doing quadruple checks to get things done. I'm actually stepping in a room with you. And if I see a muzzle coming over towards your partner, I'm blocking it. You know what I mean? There's also a part of being a CQB instructor, not just standing behind and watching what happens and being like, well, all right. Instructors have whistles, we have air horns, we have things to freeze you. We have a lot of those things to shut you down, So as an instructor, a CQB course is super mentally draining. You're tired at the end. You don't want to go hang out with the fellas. It's not because as good as they are, you're still worried because it's someone getting shot. Even if it's with sims, I set that target up. Did I cause that incident? You know what I mean? As an instructor. So there's a lot of things that have to come into when you're dealing with CQB, especially when you're a traveling road show, how the houses are set up or whatever. If in my shoot house, I knew where I can set targets all and be perfect with it. You know what I mean? But on a traveling road show, is someone going to see this differently than I'm seeing it right now? And am I endangering my students? So that's why a lot of it is just force on target before you even start getting into shooting force on force, even anything coming back, because that's just adding another level of freaking, so you can do like how you're talking about coming back to do another, I would almost recommend two classes. And then before you even hit into force on force, that would be an extra level. Cause too many people jump into paintball fights and tactics go out the fucking window. You know what I mean? Then it's just now we're just playing fucking games, because if they can't hit hit what they're doing under stress, you add ultimate stress of getting hit with a sim round. You're now just playing games, and and it's not a game. It's serious. And I think too many people, because they've never done it to a high level, they take it as a joke, or not a joke, but as easy, and watch this and watch some dumb shit happen.
That makes sense. That one incident always comes to mind when talking about CQB. What, Jordan, I want to kind of.
The worst part about it is he didn't even kill him. I mean, it sounds terrible, but I step in a room. This guy's 4 yards away from me, and I shoot him.
Yeah, you're teaching people how to be lethal.
Yeah, I went big, so I might as well
finish the job.
That whole thing. It's not finish him. I don't want you to burn him down. But that first shot was he's like, oh, he took an AK. I was like, oh, Mother Russia or whatever. Shit.
Jordan, in that same vein, what are some red flags that students should look out for, right? Because I'm sure there's somebody taking a CQB course this month or this weekend coming up. When you're looking at law enforcement instructors or law enforcement students or civilian students, what are some red flags and green flags that they should kind of key in towards?
I I do a really good job of vetting the guys I go to class with. And, you know, I vet them through, you know, other people I train with. So, you know, if I was going to take a random class, I'd, you know, call Jared, hey, you heard of this guy? Have you seen any of his stuff? You know, call some of the other guys that I've done classes with. Have you seen his stuff? Does he have a reputable background? You know, so, you know, like Jared said, hey, you're 25 years in the military. All right, cool. Tell me what unit. Did you ever teach their schoolhouse? How many rotations did you do where you're actually conducting CQB operations? That's what I hunt. I hunt a very specific background because I've kind of been around the block with trainers, and, you know, most of my good friends are national level instructors. So I hunt those backgrounds of guys that do it full time, do it at a high level, have a reputable background. I've seen them shoot. You know, because, hey, here's one thing. If the instructor can't shoot, I probably don't need to go take a CQB class from him. You know, that's a clue in my world. You know, so I'm looking for backgrounds. You know, when you look at Jared's senior CQB instructor for like 11 years, he had some skins on the wall. He'd been around, had a really good reputation in the industry. Cool, that's an easy one to get into. Oh, I've taken stuff from Jared before. So whenever went time to go looking for a CQB school, I just called him and said, I got to get in one. What do you have that I can hop into? Same way I've done it with, you know, most of the guys, and, you know, that I've taken CQB classes from. I'm hunting guys with that background. Did they come from a soft unit? Did they come from a law enforcement agency? It puts in a lot of work. Did they have time at the schoolhouse? Are they putting sketchy shit out on the internet? You know, guys will tell you that it's a little off the wall really, really quick on the internet because they got to brag about being a little bit different than the other guy, right? Like, you know, I shoot only AKs and I talk with a funny accent. I'm different than everybody else is. Let me show you, you know, the Russian version of CQB. And I'm like, you're going to gas and kill all the hostages? Cool. That doesn't apply to my life. Right? Like, that isn't an option for me where I work at. The government gets really mad if you pump gas into their office. You know, so I that's how I search instructors out like that. And then once I kind of get with somebody that I click with that teaches in a style that I retain a lot of knowledge from, I tend to stay pretty true. You know, Jared knows all the guys I train with and everybody I train with consistently. And it's because I keep coming back to the hand that taught me well in the beginning.
That's insightful, man. That's good to hear. And that's one of those, it's amazing to me. And I don't know why I'm probably because I'm an idiot, right? But it's amazing to me that, you know, that guy that we all know you're talking about is still teaching stuff. And there's still firearms instructors out there that are paying their bills, you know, taking money from students that they have no business doing it. And folks are still kind of being funneled to those folks some way or another. And in my mind, it's not hard. But I remember when I first started doing this, right, there was a well-known instructor that had a TV show on the PDN, and he was I was like, oh man, I got to train with this guy. I got to take his class. And then, and I look back and I was like, man, I was kind of silly for thinking that stuff, right? Because there's a lot of stuff that I know now that I didn't know back then. And for me right now, as you said, right, it's like the instructors that I've trained with, and then what are their students? How are their students acting on the internet? Is one of the things that kind of clues me in on how reputable the instructor is. And like to Jared's point earlier, he's like, he doesn't want his student to go out there and be like, oh yeah, I learned this from Jared, and then that instructor's like, well, what the hell are you doing that for? That doesn't make sense.
Yeah, I get my gig's pretty cool. I get to take 5 to 7 national level classes a year. If I want to go to New Hampshire and shoot with Jared and have all the fun with the boys up at Ridgeline, I can do that. You know, the wife knows it's part of the day job. That's how the family gets fed. She's not going to get mad at me for it. If I want to go to Tuscaloosa, she's in. You know, she goes to SHOT Show with me. So my job lets me go do that. And, you know, by going somewhere, a place like Shooter Symposium, you can really get a good idea of who are the cats you want to run around with and train with and be around consistently, very quickly, without popping $2,000 into a class and being gone for a week and then coming back being like, man, I really wish I'd spent that on another Glock versus that class. That's happened to me more than once. And, there's a reason that the guys I go back to consistently are the guys I go back to consistently.
I do like your comment, Jeremy, about students. Like, if they're idiots that makes a lot of sense to me, because like every instructor I'm thinking about right now, I can think about their students. And I'm like, yeah, roger that. Like, yeah. So that I never put those two together. Yeah, 100% on that.
Yeah. And I'm the same way. Andy and I took a class years ago, and it was a like a vehicle to defense class, and it was great in the sense that we learned a ton of stuff to look out for. And the biggest takeaway there is, hey man, the instructor is responsible for 100% of what happens on that range, right? If you don't want something to get shot, don't put it down range. But at the end of the day, and I was talking to one of the Facebook groups today, and I told Andy and Tim, I'm like, dude, I don't know why I opened my mouth, right? Because you're arguing with the wall. And this dude is asking about, hey, anybody have to fail a student from the qual? And I said, it's not the student that fails, it's the instructor, right? Like and if you don't go into the class with that mentality, you're going to fail your students, right? It's not one of those things where, and I get that there are some people that can't be taught, they won't learn.
Right.
But you said it earlier, right? Like, it's your job to make them motivated. It's your job to get them motivated. And it's amazing that instructors are okay charging hundreds of dollars to just supervise a range session. It blows my mind.
And that's what they're doing. They're going to say their spiel, and maybe they don't have a full grasp of even what they're saying, so that's why they can't talk on it. They learned it, they're saying it, but they don't have the personal knowledge on it or the experience to speak on it, so they can't really help anybody. You know what I mean? They'll say that the normal fixes, but like they can't talk to a person because they don't truly understand it. And it's, but again, like is it the instructor's fault? Not really, because he's probably ignorant to how he doesn't know either. But, buyer beware. Like, if I'm going to go spend some money on somebody, you should research them 100%.
Yeah, I've taken a class where they're like, oh, you're good. Can't teach you anything. And I'm like, well, can I have my $500 back? Like, you're not going to teach me anything. I like you, but I don't want to hang out with you that much.
Well, that's one of my things too, is so I've been to those classes too with instructors that they walk right past you because you can shoot. Like, I don't care what level you're at. For me, I might make you jump leaps and bounds, but if you've already jumped leaps and bounds, hopefully I can just get you to jump that 10th, maybe a 10th of a second, or get you a little bit faster, a little bit more accurate, or even help you in your instruction, like on why I talk about this. And like, you're like, all right, cool, I understand. Like, so maybe there is zero performance out of it, but you're now a better instructor because of how I talk to you. You know what I mean? Or how I talk about that part of it. Like, I always want somebody to have an aha moment in a class. How many you have is just your level of, experiences or expertise. Like, but I try to give, no matter where you're at, somebody be like, all right, I got that. I'm taking that away.
The worst part about it is I wasn't a great shooter back then.
He's still not.
Oh, whatever. Yeah.
I'm just kidding.
Oh shit.
But right? That's just how it is. There's some people that put out like some absolute garbage. You know what I mean? And I'm just like, nah, you shouldn't do that. But I'm just not. I typically don't call out people by name or anything like that because that's just not me. Like, you should research your instructors and vet them.
What would you say is not your entry level, but where should a student go? Somebody who's taken maybe like a level 100 or level 200 class after their concealed carry course, right? Like they're dialed in. They want to become a better student, a better shooter. What do you think like the good course for them that you offer would be like a great first class to kind of get them ready to take the next leap, if that makes sense?
So like Performance Gunfighting Mod 1, if that's a pistol rifle course, you know, or you can do a 2-day performance rifle, 2-day performance pistol. You know what I mean? Like depending what you want to get into. But like my number one seller probably is the Performance Gunfighting Mod 1, which is pistol rifle 2-day course, broke up, you know, in between there and working both those skills. And like really the prerequisite is just you're safe. You know what I mean? We'll work on everything else, you know.
This is the laziest question in interviewing history, but is there anything that we should have talked about with regards to CQB training, your course, your offerings that we didn't touch on before we give you the rest of the night back?
No, I mean, I think we touched on it. I mean, I think, again, I'll just reiterate, it is the next level in your shooting curriculum. You know what I mean? Like you should have some shooting, first aid, and some CQB in there.
We're looking to fulfill that CQB stuff. I got the shooting, some of the medical, but CQB is definitely something that I want to get out and start working on. And you're one of the few, maybe one of two others that I think that would be worth my time or money. So hopefully I can get training with you in the next year or so.
Yeah. Anybody listening that wants to host the class, you know, contact me. And if they have what we talked about, you know, just 2 rooms, we can make it happen.
Got a couple hotels here in Albuquerque that would that's used to gunfire.
Those are live fire. Those are live fire.
Yeah, those are live fire classes.
Those are live fire.
Yeah,
they're live fire outside. Inside, we're good.
Make friends with a real estate agent.
Yeah. Thanks for cleaning up the riffraff for us. We do appreciate it. Jordan, before we jump off here, man, is there any last piece of advice that you have for our listeners, and where can folks find more out about you?
Man, last piece of advice, you know, veteran instructors, find guys you learn from, and then stay in that curriculum and that path. You know, I've taken just about everything under the book at Reston Group multiple times, and I always come back, not because I'm learning a technical thing. I'm coming back to have Jared watch me shoot over my shoulder because he knows what I can do when I'm on. He knows what I can do when I'm off. I'm coming back to see pieces of Jared's curriculum and how he explains it, because I copy and steal everything I can get, and I use a lot of Gunfighter Mod 1. That's a lot of my intro pistol class, right? You know, if you ever see me on a flat range and then see a picture of Jared getting ready, it's gonna be like he does the exact same. He wipes his hands on his pants too, because I got that from him, man, and it worked for me, and it improved me quickly. You can find me at imperiumrisk.com. I'm mostly on social media. We don't really post classes because it's mostly closed stuff, but we're starting to do more open enrollment stuff in 24 and 25. That's about it.
I love it. And then for more information on Jared's course offerings, it's restongrouptraining.com. We'll have that in the show notes and in the comments down for you guys as well. Andy, anything before we jump off of here?
Yeah, wow. You know, having you on, Jared, thank you so much for coming on. Really appreciate it. You were one of the guys that's like, man, Jeremy, we got to get him on. So, you know, I don't want to celebrity out, you know, nerd out because we got Jared Reston on, but, you know, kind of a big deal, and I appreciate that. And we get that proof by, you know.
Email. That was crazy, huh? All it took was
yeah, I know. It was so hard, right? You know, plus, I never expected within 5 minutes of the show, Jeremy's calling you sexy and he's hitting on you. So, you know, it was kind of awkward, but cool at the same time. But in all seriousness, Jared, thank you for coming on. We appreciate taking your time. Jordan, the same. We'd like to issue that invitation for you to come on as an instructor too, and learn more of what you have to offer for us. So, thank you guys. We appreciate the evening.
Hey, no problem. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, guys.
Awesome. Remember, it's your life, it's your safety and protection, it's your responsibility. Y'all stay safe and